I had stuck my head out of the turret hatch. We were still too far away, and yet I hadn't forgotten what had happened back in Russia. I briefly ducked down and checked on my men. My gunner Helmut was hanging on his optics and had his hands on his adjustment wheels. Rudolf checked the barrel recoil again and found that everything was in order. He turned to the ammunition and made sure that everything was right there too. I nodded at him, and he said something, but I couldn't understand it because the engine was roaring loudly. He saw that I hadn't understood it, just gave me a thumbs up, and I nodded. Then I cautiously looked out of the turret again. Mortars started to fire at us, but they were small calibers, and they were certainly not far away. Our grenadiers had already made a lot of progress, and we were looking for a soft spot in the pack front. Then the first shell flew past us, and 3 more followed, so 4 packs ahead, but apparently poorly adjusted. Now the grenadiers quickly set the MGs on the firing clouds. I targeted the right pack, and we fired 2 shells into the position, after a short firing halt. It flew past us again. The guys are aiming badly. Good for us. But it could to keep moving towards the trench to have more cover. Now there was an incredibly loud bang and humming sound. We had taken a hit. The tank shook properly, and our ears were ringing. But the front plate held, and we kept rolling. Helmut had identified the target. He had fire clearance. Kurt stopped the tank. A brief re-aiming, and the second shell flew towards the enemy. 2 SPWs raced at a high speed about 200 meters to our right across the meadow, and the board MGs fired into the wall hatch. Whatever was in there had to take their legs and their hands to retreat quickly. I looked through the armored glasses in all directions. Then the message came over the radio. Tanks from the right. 2 Cromwells broke cover. Came from the flank. Damn mess. Our tank hunters were supposed to be standing there, but apparently the brothers are sleeping again. An SPW was hit. It immediately caught fire. Soldiers who were still alive jumped burning from the rear area of the SPW and rolled on the ground to extinguish the flames. Due to the high speed, the vehicles kept rolling and simply did not stop. If it keeps rolling like this, it will crash into the trench with our infantry. Pack from the front, tanks from the side. It couldn't be worse. If the Yabus came now. Helmut, I called. We take the tanks first. The turret swung quickly to the right. One of the Cromwells was already in the optics. Got him, my gunner shouted. Fire, I shouted into the onboard radio. Otherwise, we'll get one on the side. One of the Brits already shot. The wild right made the shot go wide. Now it was our turn, my dear. You had your chance. One of the Brits suddenly burst apart. The turret was torn off and thrown away in a high arc. What was that? Have our tanks finally woken up? Either way, the second tank stopped to deal with a new threat, and that was not a good idea. Our Panther jerked under the shot, and the shell hit the hull of the Cromwell full on. It stood and smoked. The hatches opened, and 2 men climbed out of the wreckage, like mad. One jumped down, the other was almost shot in 2 by the bullets of the second SPW. We have to continue. Turret back to 12 o'clock, and go. No more resistance from the north. The grenadiers had reached the tree line, and were clearing the area. We rode up to a large bush, from which we still had a good view, and could act accordingly. Now, also the tank destroyers, which stood to the west of us, moved forward. Those fools! They could have shot earlier. With binoculars, I saw how our people led prisoners into the trench and searched the Tommies. It was not a good day for the English. They got a lot. But our ranks were also thinning. We heard over the radio that more units were supposed to come to us. We had to push forward here. 2 Panther IVs and tank destroyers rolled up to us, and we moved to our next wooded position. A Kugel came up and the Hauptsturmführer of the Waffen-SS got out. Also a tankman, who wanted to coordinate the further advance with us. Heavy tank battalion. So, Tigers. We stood together with the commanders and discussed the further orders. The Americans and English, as well as the Canadians, pressing hard on the Seine. There is fighting for every street. We need more infantry there, because the tanks are already being taken out by the damn bazooka troops. Apparently, they have a lot of those things on the other side, and with that they can easily destroy a Panther 5 from the side. So one of the rascals with that thing could be sitting behind every hedge. We knelt down then and looked at the map. It all didn't look so good, if the front lines were correct. We got our attack sector, and in 5 hours it should start again. There was still enough ammunition. We should get more fuel. We didn't need the Inst, but then we looked at the hit on our front plate. Rudy said if it had gone 15 centimeters further to the left, it would have hit the driver's side hatch, full on. As it was just a deep notch, and the projectile was deflected. Lucky again. Helmut was annoyed that he could only take out one British tank. Rudy said he shouldn't care. There would certainly be plenty of enemy tanks left. The prisoners were brought past us to the rear. One of the men was an officer, and probably the commander, who had come out of the Cromwell. I told the NCO, who had been assigned to guard duty, that I would like to speak to the officer. I waved the man over and offered him a cigarette. He seemed a bit confused. I think my big scar made me look somehow threatening. I smiled and spoke to him in English about the past battle. It took a while, but then he explained to me that he came from near London and had already fought against us in Africa. But Panther, as an opponent, was something new for him. And he kept looking at our tanks as we talked. I would have liked to show him the good piece in detail, but we were not allowed to do that. Twice he had already been shot down. Normandy, apparently, they have enough tanks on the coast that you would always get a new one. With us, it was the other way around, which I didn't tell him. Rudy came up. The eyes of the Brit widened when he saw Rudy. He didn't just have scratches on his face because he got stuck in a thorn bush while picking cherries. With all the scars on his face, he looked like a rogue. The Tommies then said we looked like we had been through 1 or 2 messes. Eastern Front, I told him. He understood. Tough guys, he said. We shook hands, and I let him go. Just a human. Who knows if it would have been the other way around, and he could have shot us. Although, while seemingly having lost his entire crew in the attack, he didn't seem to hold a grudge against us. I wonder if I would have been so calm if all my men were dead. Rudy said, he probably just took over his crew with the new tank. Then it's still bad, but you don't have this deep bond with the other comrades in the tank. Maybe. We sat down on the tree trunk and smoked. Then a hiss, artillery fire, and it already smoked up. We crawled under the tanks and hoped it would be over quickly. Everything was running around like a rabbit hunt. Shell after shell hammered into the section, and small and large shrapnel banged against our tank. Stay down and wait. After 10 minutes, the ghost was over, and we came out of cover again. Men were screaming, and wounded whimpering. We looked after the injured and helped as best as we could. 8 wounded and 4 dead. Also found the NCO, who had been guarding the prisoners with his leg torn off, lying against a tree. Next to him, several dead Englishmen, and also the officer from before was lying on his back. A splinter had pierced his chest, and a fist-sized hole was visible. I knelt down and realized it was too late to do anything. Blood was running from his mouth, and he took a few more breaths. Then his eyes closed, and he died. That's how fast it can go. Just escaped death, and an hour later killed by our own artillery. Damn war. Helmut came up and had a bandage on his arm. Nothing bad, he said. It also came up and we carried the dead to the collection place, so they could be buried. Half an hour later, the wounded were loaded, and we checked if the vehicles would still be okay. Only scratches had our Panther. Only the Panther-4 had gotten a splinter in the engine block. He had to go back, so one less again. Nonetheless, we had to move as quickly as possible if the RT would hammer down on us again and cause even more deaths. So the tank parts moved forward, and we rode up to a small village with 10 houses. Many trees here and good camouflage. Tomorrow we are supposed to push forward again, to the flank of the attack wedge. And who then secured our flank? Evening, the field kitchen managed to bring stew forward. Because they cooked for more men than we were here in the front, there was plenty. Fill your stomach properly. Who knows when there will be something again. Above us, the Allied bombers were humming again, and dropping their deadly load on our supply points. Our Air Force should get involved in this, but they certainly had also enough problems getting pilots. After 5 years of war, there's simply not much experienced personnel left. We lay down under the tank, tried to get some sleep. Tomorrow would be a hard day.